You're listening to Retail Disrupted, a podcast that explores the latest industry developments and the trends that will shape how we shop in the future. I'm your host, Natalie Berg. This week, we are celebrating International Women's Day. I have such a special and inspiring guest for you all. I'm so excited to share this conversation with you. I am going to be speaking to the iconic Dame Zandra Rhodes, who is going to talk us through her illustrious career as a fashion designer. We're going to talk about what it was like to dress stars like Freddie Mercury. We're going to talk about the importance of defying the norm. And we're also going to hear about Dame Zandra's more recent collaborations with brands like IKEA and Happy Socks. First, let me say a few words about Dame Zandra. Known for her fabulously bold prints, she launched her eponymous fashion brand 56 years ago. Nicknamed the Princess of Punk, Dame Zandra burst onto the fashion scene in the late 1960s and continues to work from her studio in London today. She began as a printed textile designer and is renowned for perfecting the art of print as an intrinsic influence on garment shape. With dramatic designs and her own distinctive look, Dame Zandra paved the way for fashion as theater and entertainment. She's dressed international stars like Diana Ross and Barbra Streisand, as well as British royalty, most notably Princess Diana and Princess Anne. This interview took place in front of a live audience at the Springfair event in Birmingham. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. I think the first thing I'd like to ask you is, which era was your favorite?
I suppose really I remember most with love my first collections in the 70s, which are really all the flowing chiffons and all the dramatic, because it was my adventure into fashion. I was printing them myself and cutting them out and doing all the finishing. And so I was very much involved with the whole thing. I mean, I still am involved with anything that I do, but I suppose it was really that it was the first of my adventures. And so it was all totally new. And it was really that I was fighting to make things work, so you don't realize the size of the adventure. So I think that's really what it was.
Yeah, and if we just go back to the beginning and you just showed those gorgeous photos of Natalie Wood wearing your collection, I mean, just how big of a moment was that for you? Were you surprised by how quickly things took off for you?
It was just quite amazing that Women's Wear ran a whole article on me the same week that I was there. And then I was introduced to the top interior decorator, Angelo Donghia, that is the one that you heard about if you watched that Halston thing. And he said, well, look, if you look like that, I want to see your designs. So he took a whole range of furnishing fabrics and wallpapers. So it was almost like I was walking on air. You know, it was a wonderful, wonderful period. Of course, I probably see it through a gorgeous cloud now, but it still seems like a wonderful thing that sometimes I can't even think, how did that happen to me? I do think with all of us, we just have to hope that we take advantage of the opportunities that come along and run with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Your memoir is being released later this year, and we'll come on to that a little bit later in the conversation. But I thought it was interesting how you discussed how you spent your life rallying against what was expected of you, both as a designer and as a female. And you talk about the importance of defying the norm. So I wonder if you can elaborate on this a little bit and how you went about challenging the status quo.
I think with all of us, if we're designers, you have to try and find your own niche for wherever you're going to fit in and try and work out I just knew that I couldn't have been designing in textures. I just felt that was the right thing to do. I don't know why it happened inside me, although I do feel that one should always surround oneself by encouraging friends, not people that are going to put you down, because you'll always find someone who's going to say you shouldn't do it, but then you might regret it for the rest of your life that you didn't go ahead and try something.
Yeah. Yeah. Surround yourself with those people that do believe in you and give you that
Yes,
encouragement.
and I've been very lucky in having wonderful friends that try things or experiment or think of using me for something, and I think that's extremely important in life.
Yeah. Let's talk about your personal image because you have a signature look. To what extent has your personal image led to the success of your brand?
So, um, I had a wonderful friendship with Leonard, the hairdresser, and it was very funny because Vidal Sassoon brought out green wigs, and I put a green wig on, and it pinched my head. And I thought, well, hang on, as a textile person, I'm sure one can dye hair as much as you can dye stuff that grows on sheep. So I went along first to Vidal Sassoon, and they said, you've got black hair, we're not going to touch it. Then I went to Leonard, and they experimented with bleaching, and I took my own dyes in and thought, well, they can use those because they hadn't invented all these coloured dyes at the time. So, of course, the green, which I tried first, used to end up like old dried grass, but, so I trialed, and I worked very closely with fabulous makeup artists. At that time, I was still doing those all myself, and it was before MAC makeup, so you'd have to go to Woolworths and see what you could find to try out different ideas. And then I worked with a wonderful makeup artist, Richard Shara, who invented the 3 makeups and the square beauty spots for the punk look. And I used to still teach 1 day a week, and I used to wonder why they were looking at me at Victoria Station. And then India was always a big influence with all the blue shading around like the blue gods and things like that. So I had a wonderful time trying out all the different things.
And you've dressed everyone from rock stars to royalty. Touched on it in the intro. You've dressed Diana Ross, Freddie Mercury, Donna Summer, Princess Diana, the list goes on. Your visions span generations and genres, but was there a particular moment from your career that stood out for you?
I really enjoyed dressing Freddie Mercury. He and Brian phoned me up, and I had a funny little studio in Bayswater where you had to climb up all these flights of stairs to get to the attic. And I said, well, you'll have to come in the evening because I don't have this was in about 1974, 75, before they were the size group they are now. And so they came in the evening, and then I picked off a wedding top, which is the pleated one that you always see Freddie in. And, and I said, move around the room and see how you feel in the outfit. And that's the one they always remember him in, which is quite fantastic.
Yeah. And is there anyone that you'd like to work with? Anyone out there today that...
Oh, I wouldn't say no to doing something for Beyonce or whatever, It'd be great to do one for a star.
Oh, fantastic. So if we shift gears a little bit and talk about your rainbow penthouse, this is both your home and studio, and it sits on top of the Fashion and Textile Museum, which you founded in 2003. It's a color-loving maximalist dream. I absolutely love it. What do you most appreciate about your home, and how has it evolved over the years?
Well, my great friend Andrew Logan was living in Bermondsey, which was they hadn't built the Shards, so it was a bit of the back of beyond. He said, Zandra, you've always wanted to do a museum. There's this warehouse going in Bermondsey. Why don't you get it? So I realised I could sell my house in Nottingham Gate and afford to buy this warehouse. So I bought the warehouse and lived in quite squalid conditions for a couple of years and ran my business from there as well. Moved everything I owned into the whole warehouse. And then I thought the government would give me a grant, but they didn't. So my boyfriend was fabulous, and he said, well, why don't you get another... Well, first of all, I thought I have to choose a notable architect, and I thought that Ricardo Legarreta, the Mexican architect, would be not only wonderful PR, but he did buildings in bright colours. And so I'd managed to maneuver meeting him live, and I flew him to London first class on my mileage tickets, and convinced him that Bermondsey was an up-and-coming area, and he agreed to design the building for me. And then we got another architect, Alan Camp, to work with him to build flats on the top so we could sell the flats, and that would pay for doing the whole building. And so my penthouse is on the top of the building, and in true style that fitted in with Lee Greta, we decided it should be rainbow.
Now, twice a year, you actually open the doors of the Rainbow Penthouse and host a sample sale. And I imagine it's not a conventional retail experience. So can you maybe talk us through what happens at the sale and what makes it so unique?
Well, I just have a group of fabulous other designers. Andrew Logan, who used to live round the corner in his place, he used to do the sales, and then I took it over. So we have a big table selling Andrew Logan jewellery, of which I have some on, which he does as a money maker to pay for doing his sculpture a lot of the time. Then I have Piers Atkinson selling his hats. Sometimes I have Kat McConey with her magical shoes, and various other designers. And it's really quite a wonderful experience where everyone just comes round and has a social occasion, and we sell various samples that I might have, so, and maybe scarves, whatever I have going at the time.
Now, if we go back a few years to those dark COVID times, your business, like so many, had to adapt, and I imagine do that pretty quickly as well. So can you share with us how the structure of your business has evolved?
Well, it's been very interesting. With COVID, we were making dresses that we were selling to Liberties at that time, and suddenly everything got cancelled. You'd find that there was always a clause where someone says we can send it back even 2 or 3 weeks beforehand. You'd already made it. So the whole of my business, including printing the fabric, making it, would have been, I think we were making trouser suits at that time that were going to Liberties. They got sent back, and everything got completely shut down. And I just kept 2 staff who worked with me remotely. And for me, it was a fantastic period because all through my career, I always saved my favourite originals. So I kept the first of the Freddie Mercury top. I kept one of the Princess Diana dresses that she tried on. And so when we went through all these 87 chests that I had, I found that I'd got over 5,000 garments. So once they slightly lifted the rules of COVID, we were able to catalogue. So we've been cataloguing all of the fabrics that I did during that time, all of the garments, and we're now working out which museums across the world are going to have some of the key pieces. So it's been a very exciting period.
Let's talk about some of your strategic collaborations. Over the past few years, you've teamed up with a number of fashion and lifestyle brands such as IKEA, Happy Socks, and Poppy Lissiman. So could you talk us through what the inspiration was behind these partnerships?
Well, I had at that time my agent, who I'd met when we did an exhibition on Sweden, and she proposed to be my agent, and she first of all asked me if I would go on a trip to Sweden to their wonderful interior show, and they chose to do a mock-up of my rainbow penthouse as the entry to their big show, which is like Earl's Court and Olympia, you know, all those wonderful ones. So she said, what would you really like to do? And I said, I'd love to do a collection for IKEA. I mean, IKEA is like one of the gods of the industry. And so I was introduced to the head of IKEA and ended up going with my team to do a whole collection with rugs and vases, lampshades, carpets. So that was my collection for IKEA that was launched once COVID slightly lifted, because we did some of the stuff by Zoom, which has been an amazing way of communication ever since. You don't have to go to meetings everywhere. So when they'd get their samples, so I get one rug to me, one rug was sent to Sweden, and we could talk over Zoom and compare the things. So it was fabulous like that.
Yeah. I know you're going to talk to Happy Socks and some of the other collaborations, but before we do that, can I just ask one more question about IKEA? Because it's clearly a very different market to what you were used to working with. So how does working with a brand like IKEA help to democratize your designs? Are there any kind of learnings from
It's
that collaboration?
fantastic working with an organization where it's a whole village that's been set up, and the joy of the whole thing and the teams they put together and how they market the whole thing. It was a wonderful experience going over to Sweden and being in their actual village and talking to their staff and with my staff and everything. So it was a great experience.
I'd like to get your thoughts around the future of fashion. Big topic. And firstly, I'd like to ask you about sustainability, because I know that's a key theme of the show. And, it's no secret that fashion is a resource-intensive industry. There is a big push towards circularity. And across the wider retail sector, we are seeing real progress when it comes to things like resale and rental, repair. So it feels like, we're, moving in the right direction. But what more do you think can be done? Do you think that the industry can ever truly be sustainable?
I think the way the world's going, we've got to think of everything being sustainable. I think, to see how we can make things last or be used in different ways so that we're not always thinking we've got to have something new, or we have one thing new that you then wear with other things, so that I think we can't keep using the world's resources. We've got to think more carefully, which means the bigger companies have got to think, can we size down very cleverly? Do you know what I mean? And work out what we can do about it, and have things that we go on wearing. And we can't just think of the fact that we've always got to be seen as something new, but treasure what we have and work out how we can add to it and make different looks without it always being new.
So durability being really important.
I think that's a very important thing, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. What about digital transformation? Because we've seen a big shift with, obviously, a lot more of us are shopping online. We're all connected with our phones, and our expectations around digital are now kind of through the roof. But how do you think digital has impacted the fashion industry?
In a way, it's almost killed the shopping industry. You know what I mean? I think it's a very difficult situation. I walk down Bond Street and the whole street's empty. It means that everything really has turned digital, and I don't really know what we're going to do about all of those wonderful front pieces. Are they just selling what's in the background? It's a very difficult situation, I think.
I guess within fashion, though, there's still that need to feel the fabric and try stuff on. I mean, sizing is a big challenge as well. So I guess there'll always be an element of
I think there has to be. You can't try it on through a screen. I don't know what the final solution is going to be in that sense.
Yeah.
Because also, in a weird way, our lives have got so busy that it's not always that you can just drift along and try things on. But on the other hand, sometimes it worries me on the wastefulness of things being sent out and people trying them on and then sending some back, and the whole thing like that. It's a
whole buy to try mentality where you order 6 things and send 5 back.
Yes, it's a very difficult situation.
Yeah, I think it is difficult for the retailers as well, because they're kind of enabling that and training.
It's extremely difficult for retailers.
Yeah. So I want to move on to what comes next. Now, you recently set up the Zandra Rhodes Foundation. You're currently cataloging your archive of over 6,000 garments. Can you tell us a little bit about the foundation and its aims?
Well, the Zandra Rhodes Foundation is, at the moment, totally cataloguing all the clothes that I've done and trying to work out which museums and where things go to. And then, very excitedly, is the Red Room in Blenheim Palace, where at the very end of March we're doing a presentation of about 20 to 24 of my historical garments that we're going to show in this room. The rest of the rooms, you've got John Galliano and you've got Stephen Jones. So there's a whole group of us designers, each picked a room, and we're going to be showing, and we're showing my historical collection. And the 24 garments that are going into that are really part of what Kerry Taylor is taking for raising a sale for the museum. So they'll be able to see my historical garments there, which is extremely exciting.
And that opens in March, is that right?
I think the opening's Friday the 22nd, I think it is, and then it's open to the public after that until the end of June.
Right. And you have been busy because you've also been writing your memoir. This is going to be published with Penguin in July. It's called Iconic: My Life in Fashion in 50 Objects. It's the first time that you're telling your life story.
Oh,
so
dear.
What was that experience like? And is there anything that you can share with us from your upcoming book?
It was actually a terribly difficult experience because the person doing it with me, Ella Alexander, who I first knew when she started on English Vogue, and then she went to Harper's, and then she came to me and said, I'd really like to write a memoir, and you, Zandra, also going to illustrate it. So I've had to do all the illustrations by hand. So it's a whole memoir of bits of my life that I hope will be interesting and not too revealing, but I'm not sure yet.
To wait till July to find out. One final question for you. What advice would you give to the next generation of designers and creatives in the room?
Never give up. The world might be changing, so you hope that you adapt to it and continue, and don't let people put you off. Always surround yourself with people that are at least encouraging. You can always find someone that will say, don't do it, you can't do it. But then what do you do after that? You'd always feel like a defeated person. You're better to aim at something and know that you might reach the stars than to not do it at all and then regret it for the rest of your life. You'll always find someone that will put you down, and always surround yourself with people that encourage you. If it's going to require a lot of work, you don't want someone that's always going to make you go out to a nightclub. I mean, when I've talked to some students, and it's a bit like Alice in Wonderland, you've got that wonderful jar of cookies up there, and you lift down the cookie and it says, I want to be a famous designer. The only thing is, once you've swallowed the pill, you can't sick it up again, and you've just got to go with where it leads you, and realize that there's always an up and a downside, and make sure that you take advantage of the upside and ignore the horrible bits.
Fantastic. It's been an absolute honor having you here with us today. Thank you.
It's been lovely. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Retail Disrupted. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the podcast, please leave a rating or review or share it with others. It really makes a difference.